Okay, hello everyone. I'm Apocalypse the Geek Guru, and today I'm going to be reviewing episode 8 of The Gilded Age, Tucked Up in New York. I know it's been a little while and I'm behind. I'm going to finish up this review and then I'm going to watch episode 9 and do that review. So hopefully I can get both videos out at least by tonight, since it takes forever for my phone to upload videos. So, alright. That being said, let's get right into this, because this was a really good episode and I can't wait to talk about it. Now, it starts out with George Russell. He's in his office talking to Clay and his lawyers about the case, about the train crash. And basically they're just telling him that they haven't learned anything new. That they haven't, And he even says, so long and short of it is, you are all here to represent my interests, but you have come up with absolutely nothing. And he smacks the table, which finally, his table smack. And he is pissed, and rightly so. And it's not his people. I mean, yeah, he's upset that they haven't found anything, but it's the situation, and it's like that's probably might have been like the angriest we've seen him. I think, and again, rightly so. He has every right to be totally just pissed off because he didn't do anything. It's the whole situation is totally messed up. So, totally understand where he's coming from. I mean, I've never been accused of crashing a train, but I assume it sucks. So anyway, then it cuts down to the downstairs of the Russell's house, and Miss Bruce is talking to everybody, basically telling them that they need to get ready and go up because Mrs. Russell is about to tell them what they're gonna have for the ball and stuff that they're gonna have for Gladys. And it's really funny because she tells them everything, and then she's like, "Is everything gonna be all right, Church? Like, Church, do you have any questions?" And he's just like, "Everything's under control, man." Like, I feel like she's still like remembering that luncheon where he couldn't do it, where it was like, "Oh, I don't want to put too much on you, Church," So now it's like every time she asks him to do something, it's like, is that gonna be okay, Church? It's funny, but we have. Oh no, that's later. We get to see like their what's it called, the quadrillion or whatever. It's a really weird dance. It's one of those like weird like rich people posh dances where it's like, I'll show y'all because it's weird. But anyway, so Mrs. Russell is talking to Gladys about the quadrille, and Gladys asks her like, "Hey, do you want to, talk about my dress and stuff like that?" And Mrs. Russell is just like, "Oh, it's all right. I've already taken care of it. I've ordered it. They have your measurements and everything." And Gladys just kind of makes a face, like, because she's still. It's like, okay, she's letting her go out and, be out and have a party. But she's still picking the dress. Like, she's giving her a little bit of leeway, like a little bit of freedom, but she's still like, no, I'm going to pick what you wear. But, so then it cuts to quite possibly my favorite pair in the whole show. Oscar Van Ryn and I don't know, John Quincy Adams Jr. or something. I don't know, something, Mr. Adams something. But basically, they're sitting here's the thing: they're sitting in the middle of the bar, but it's not their normal bar. Like, it's not the normal dive bar that they're kind of in. It's a really nice sort of like it's not even a bar. It looks like a restaurant. Yeah. And Oscar's telling him, like, "Hey, I'm gonna be in Newport. I'm gonna be in Newport with the Russells. They're gonna be up there at the same time." And obviously, Mr. Adams, he's very against Oscar going out and being and like liking Gladys. He's very against it. And Oscar's just like, "Hey, what do you expect? I want what's best for you, and you should want what's best for me." And uh, Mr. Adams, he basically yells, he's like, but the difference is I love you. And you can see, you can see right here, Oscar's just like, for Christ's sake, like, look at the place they're in. This isn't their normal dive bar. Like, this is a real posh place. So Oscar's just like, for Christ's sake. Like, where do you think we are? And it's interesting to note that the bar that they usually go to might actually be, I doubt it is, because they were very few and far between back then. It might actually be like a sort of gay bar, you know, because they did have like, because obviously, you know, it wasn't publicized though. It was a very secret thing. Like if you were gay back then, you had to be real freaking secretive about it. They didn't have pride parades and all this kind of stuff now. Like no, they even go over this in Downton Abbey. How one of their staff is gay and he gets invited to like this gay bar, and the place gets busted because it was actually like it was illegal, I think, to be gay back then, at least in Britain, but I'm not sure. I think it was called buggery, something. I don't. Anyway, the point is that they had to be very secretive of it. But I don't think that the bar they usually go to is like for that. I think it's just like a shady little bar that they can go to and talk about, and not where people aren't going to give a crap about what they say. But in a place like this, I don't see any women. It's probably some sort of like men's club or restaurant or something maybe. But you know, in this place, there's probably going to be at least a couple people who are listening to them and know who they are. And which makes me wonder, they're pretty like high up and like not famous. I mean, obviously Mr. Adams, he's like the relative of a former president. So I mean, I'm sure a lot of people know who he is. So I'm wondering like, does nobody question like, hey, you know, I see Oscar Van Ryn with Mr. Adams a whole hell of a lot, like meeting in secret in bars and stuff. Like it just seems like two people who are that like, who would that it'd be that high up in society. Like I feel like people would talk, but I don't know. I guess not. I mean, I don't know. So anyway, after they're done talking, it cuts to the Van Ryns downstairs, and we see John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. He's asking to go, you know, to get off early, and we see he's got some flowers with him. Like he's carrying like a bouquet of flowers with him that he's kind of like hiding and stuff. And the Bridget, forgot her name for a second. The cook maid, the kitchen maid. She's you know curious. She's like, hey, why is he, you know, what's he doing? Where's he going with that? And Miss Bauer, the cook, she's just like, the only reason you're curious is because he's not soft on you anymore. Which, I don't know, it's typical. But then it cuts upstairs, and Oscar is leaving to go. He's leaving to go to Newport, like with the Russells, like he's going with Larry and stuff. So he's going to Newport with Larry Russell, and I think they're going to go with like meet with Mrs. Fish, and Mrs. Russell is going to be up there at the same time with Gladys, with Mr. McAllister, I think. So they're not going to like Oscar isn't going with the Russells. He's going like with Larry, I think. You know, and they're going to be in separate parts, but they're going to be up there at the same time. So Oscar's like, hey, you know, we can meet up. So it cuts to, you know, they go outside and, Marion shows him off and stuff. And as they're standing outside, Larry and Oscar and Marion, now she's seeing him off and stuff. Doesn't matter. Mr. Russell's, she's called a stenographer. And I think she's like the one who like takes the notes and stuff of like meetings and gives it to his actual secretary, who is Mr. Clay, who's Clay. Mr. Clay. You might have heard the term court stenographer. Like they're the people in courts who are taking notes and like of everything going down and said and stuff. So she's basically like, I think she's Mr. Russell's stenographer. She takes notes. I thought she was his secretary and Clay was like his assistant or something, but you know, I guess that's how they did stuff back then. So anyway, she comes up and hands him some papers and is like, "Hey, Larry, take these to Mr. Russell. They're very important." And then she walks off, and he's just like, "Hey, I better take these into give these to church." And it's funny. He walks off, and Marion asks Oscar, she's like, "Did you know that Gladys was going to be up there at the same time when you accepted the offer?" And Oscar goes, "I can't remember." I love Oscar, man. And then he after that, he walks into the carriage, and Larry comes up, and he's like, "Hey, bye, Marion." And Marion goes, "Watch out for your sister." And like glances over at Oscar, and he's like, and then Larry goes, "You're right. Oscar's a determined suitor, but he'll have to get past my mother, and he'll need all his tricks to do that." Which, he's tricky. Oscar's funny. And then it goes back, and like we follow Marion back inside, and Aurora's there. If anyone doesn't remember, Aurora is Miss Fane, the charity lady. And she's talking about how she's going to go up with Miss Russell. And she's going to Newport too. It's a whole, like, most of this episode, or a lot of it, or at least a good part of it, takes place in Newport. We get to see a little bit more in Newport, which, if anyone doesn't know, I don't know if I explained it before, and it might still be this way, but back then, like, New York people, the hoity-toities and all that, people, they would go to Newport, Rhode Island, which, that's where it is, Rhode Island. You may have heard it mentioned in Family Guy as well. It's where Lois's parents live. They live in Newport. It's like where all the rich people live. Like they live in Newport. And back then, people just had summer homes and stuff like that there, which a lot of people do now. People have summer homes and stuff in places like that. So anyway, they're all just talking about because she's going up there with Miss McAllister, and Ada goes, "You can't be going alone to stay with Mr. McAllister." And, because he's married, and she, implying like, "Oh, you can't go alone with a man." And Aurora says, "I'd be as safe as Brandy if I were," like implying that he's not going to touch her. The implication obviously is that he's not interested in women. Which I called way back when they first showed him, when he kind of like held on to Mr. Rakes and was like, "You must let me know if I can help you anyway." I called it. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to look that up or something to see if that was true. I mean, they wouldn't. I'm not sure if it would be published or anything, but, So yeah, I called that, and apparently it's not not a state secret or anything. Oh, man. It's funny. Agnes makes a comment about like, why does everyone must go to Newport? Why does everyone go to Newport? When I was married, we used to go to Saratoga Springs, and she's basically just like, "Oh, it was all the rage back when I was a kid." Back when I was a kid, and Ada is just like, "Well, obvious, like that's why it's not cool anymore, because it was cool like 40 years ago." Agnes, I don't know why I keep mixing the names up. Agnes just can't get with the times. Oh, man. Oh, and Aurora says that Mr. McAllister had invited Miss Russell as well, and Ada's just like, "Do you think she'll accept?" And Agnes is just like, "Of course she will. She's been trying to muscle her way into New York. She was bound to jam her foot in the door of Newport. And she just can't get over She just can't get over Mrs. Russell." So they all leave, and Bannister walks in with John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, and he goes that Bannister's just like, "Hey, John's got to leave early, so I'm going to handle the coffee." And Agnes goes, "Well, you might want to ask him for some tips, because when he served luncheon that one day when you were gone, it was great." He managed things so efficiently. Like, she just can't let that go. She's not letting that go. She will not, I swear to God, we'll be in the season finale of season 2, and she's still going to be talking about it. Mark my words. And it's funny. She's like, all of our servants seem to have some sort of like obligation or something. They're all going off somewhere. And Marion's just like, oh, Aunt Agnes, servants have to have lives too, you know? And classic Agnes, she turns back and goes, why? Oh, man. And then they go off to the parlor, Ada and Agnes, they go off to the parlor, and Aurora sort of brings Marion over, and she's like, hey, you know, I worry about Mr. Mr. Rakes, you know, he's all over the place. And when I was with him at the, you know, party, the lighting and thing. And remember last episode, he was there with a girl, and the girl was like flirting with him and stuff, which I'm sure happens all the time, you know? So, I mentioned that, you know, I think I did, that Aurora seemed like worried about that, you know? She likes, Marion, and she wants her to be happy. And I think that she thinks that, Mr. Rakes is a good guy and would be a good match for her, you know? And, then it cuts downstairs, and, John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, he goes and he, like, answers someone's at the door and stuff. And, Bridget, you know, she goes up to Mrs. Bauer, and she's just like, oh, he's hiding something, you know, he's hiding something. And Miss Bauer's just like, hey, it's his business. And then turns out Mr. Rakes was at the door. He's coming in downstairs, which, you know, they mentioned is kind of weird that if he's calling over for Marion, because that's usually who he sees, and he would come in from the front door, you know. You would only go in the back door if you had, like, you know, if it was business, or if you were a servant or stuff, or if you were Peggy. But he comes in, he's like, hey, I have a letter from Miss Scott, you know, would you please take it up to her? And Miss Armstrong, she kind of weasels over, and she's like, oh, I'll take that up. I'm going up there now. Oh, man. And then it cuts to upstairs to Peggy's room. Marion walks in, and she's just like, hey, I have an answer I'm going to tell Mr. Rakes that I'm going to marry him, you know, and she's going to elope. And basically she said that Tom, Mr. Rakes, he thinks that Aunt Agnes will only come around after the wedding, you know. And then Miss Armstrong comes in, and that's when she leaves the letter. And it's funny because she's like, for Mr. Rakes. And Marion's like, do you think it's a sign? And she goes to take the letter. And I gotta show you this. It's real quick. You can see she goes to take the letter. But her face is just so deflated. It's just like, oh God, that smile. Mrs. Armstrong's smile. That's like the second time she smiled, and it's only because she screwed people over. Okay. Here we get to the quadrille. It like twists my tongue. I don't know why. It's weird to say quadrille. Maybe because I'm so used to saying quadrillion or something like that, and it's like I'm stopping halfway through the word. Anyway. This is one of the oddest things I've ever like. What the hell are they doing? What are they doing? Pretending to pick flowers? The guys are just sitting there on their knees with their arms stretched out. Like, what the is going on? Rich people, man. Glad I'm poor, because this is ridiculous. Having to wear a corset and pretend to pick flowers for some imaginary bouquet while a dude's on his knees with his arms outstretched. That's what inbreeding does, folks. That's how you end up with dances like that shit. Oh, man. So anyway, I'm interested to see, because apparently they're going to have, like, costumes and stuff. And Miss Russell says that, you'll get to see all of your costumes, at the ball. It's going to be a gift to all of you and stuff like that. And then it cuts downstairs to the Van Ryns and John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. He's just coming back. Now, I swear to God, I thought he was going to a brothel. For those who don't know, a brothel is another term for a whorehouse or a house of ill repute, as it might have been called. A house of ill repute. Anyway, so I swear to God, that's where I thought he was going. I thought why he was bringing flowers, I don't know. He was a love-struck puppy, a little puppy dog. I'll take you away from all of this stuff. But I don't know. I swear to God, that's where I thought he was going. It's not. We'll get to that later. Anyway, he comes in. And because his hair kind of looks like disheveled more than usual. I mean, he's usually got a nice little like comb over and stuff like that. So anyway, he's just like, oh, I'll be in my room, but knock if you need me. And Bridget, she's just like, oh, he's hiding something. And oh man, that's really good because her smile. And you can see the caption. Look at her. If he is, he's not the only one. Like she just loves to like, oh my God. And she goes, if she is, he's not the only one. Is he, Miss Scott? She is just so, she's so happy. And it's so funny. Like, she's literally just like smiling from cheek to cheek. And as soon as she said that, she's just, Peggy's just like, what? And then that's kind of the end of that. And everyone's just kind of like awkward, like, oh God, here Miss Armstrong comes at it again. And then it cuts up to, well, not up to, but over to George Russell. He's at his office, talking about Clay. And they're talking about how the hearing is going to be tomorrow. Now, a hearing, they go over this in the show, but if anyone doesn't know, they're basically having a hearing to convict, like, to see whether, in front of a judge, it's not a full trial. It's just the judge is literally hearing the evidence in the case and everything and deciding, he's going to decide whether or not it should go to trial. So they talk about this, that all they have to do is convince the judge they didn't do anything wrong. And basically, Mr. Russell, he's just like, if it goes to case, if the case goes to trial, then it's all going to be over for my wife. We're going to be outcasts. And he literally says, it doesn't worry me, but it would worry her. Because he's made it very clear that he doesn't give a damn about any of his high society stuff. Like, he's richer than Croesus. Like, what the hell, man? He doesn't care about Mr. McAllister or Miss Astor or anything like that. So then it goes over to, back over to the Van Ryns. And Mary and Peggy's like, distraught, messing with Aunt Agnes's papers, doing her secretary work or whatever. And Marion comes up and she's like, hey, what's going on? And Peggy's just like, I think Armstrong opened that letter before she gave it to me. There was a little tear in it. And she made a comment at luncheon or whatever. And then Ada walks in and she's, before that, Marion's just like, is that bad? And, she's like, would that be bad? And Peggy's just like, well, it wouldn't be good. And Ada walks in, she's like, what wouldn't be good? And Marion says, Miss Scott thinks that Armstrong has read one of her letters. And Ada's just like, she's sly enough, that's for sure. And Peggy walks out, she's like, good evening. She walks out. And Marion looks at Ada, and she's like, that was fighting talk, Aunt Ada. And Ada's just like, I don't like Armstrong. I never have. Which, oh my god, that's like the first person I think Ada has ever mentioned that she didn't like, or like that she like, it's just crazy. So then it shows the Russells, and they're getting ready to go. Well, the Russell staff, they're getting the carriages all ready and all packed up to go. And you got Church and Miss Bruce is there, and Bannister walks over. And he's like, "Oh, is someone traveling?" And she tells him like, "Hey, she tells him all the Russells are going to Newport and stuff." And he goes, "Oh, I hear you're making some changes in your household." And they're like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And he goes, "Hasn't Miss Turner left?" And Church is like, "Did you know Miss Turner?" And Bannister goes, "Not well, but she wrote to me before she went." And he goes, "I gather she was no great friend of yours, Mr. Church." And he's like, "Why do you say that?" He's like, "Oh, it's nothing you need to worry about. Today, at least." The catty butler, I love it. Like, oh, man. And then he looks over and Monsieur Baudin, I think is how you say it. He's having an argument with some woman who's got a really big chin and a really protruding jawline. And it's not important to the story. I just had to point that out because I'm seeing a profile right now, and it's like, whoa. So he's having an argument with some woman, and they're just like, "Oh, whatever. We're gonna head inside." So they all head inside, and then it cuts to Watson, and he's staring at that woman again, and she sees him staring at her, and she sends over one of her footmen. She's like, "Hey, go get him." And the footman goes over and he's like, "Hey, can she, Miss whatever, I forget her name. She wants to know if she can help you." Like, and he's like, "What do you mean?" She goes, and he's like, "Well, she says she's seen you staring at her before and she wants to know if she can do anything for you." And he's like, and she calls them both over, so he goes over. And she asks him, like, again, "Is there something I can help you with?" And she, "I've noticed you watching me." And he's just like, "You don't know me?" She goes, "Should I? Mr. And he goes, "Collier." Which, as we know, his name is Watson. So, either that's his first name, it could be that Mrs. McNeil, that's what it was. So it could be that was his first name, but he could also be using a fake name. I'm not sure. Figure that out next episode, maybe. So then we go to Mr. Rakes' office. Marion's there waiting for him. And she comes in to his office, and they're just talking about how he mentions that he doesn't think that Aunt Agnes will accept them until they're married. Which, I don't know. I think it might piss her off. It's 50-50, honestly, with Agnes. You never know. Because she is like a woman who's been through hardships, and she understands, making a mistake. Like marrying the wrong person, But she also has a reputation and is stuck in her old ways and a lot of her old ways. So, like I said, and she's like, "So we're gonna elope?" And now, for anyone who doesn't know what elope means, it essentially means that you go off and get married without the permission or blessing of your parents. I actually had a cousin who did that. And so anyway, she's just like, "So we're gonna elope. We're gonna go and do that." So they're gonna apparently, she answered. She said yes. She said yes. And so they're gonna go off and get married. They have a good, nice little kiss and stuff while sweeping music plays. I don't know what sweeping music is. Anyway, so then it cuts back down to the Russells, and or the Russells downstairs. That is, I should say, and Church, Watson / Collier, Miss Bruce, and Monsieur Baudin are all downstairs, and Church asks him, "Hey, is everything all right? We saw you having some sort of argument." And he's just like, "I was. And Watson's just like, well, aren't you going to tell us what it was about, Monsieur? And he's just like, and Monsieur Boudin gets up and he's like, nope. Packs up his stuff. He's like, I'm going to bed. So obviously it was, I like how the show will do that sometimes. Well, most of the time they'll do that. Like, they won't just, like, be like, yes, it was my, this and so, my long lost love. People don't always talk like, that's not really how people talk. It's very real, like, he works with them. I mean, yeah, I suppose they live together, but they're like colleagues, He would just spill his entire life story right off the bat. So then it cuts to Newport, and they're at, we got Mr. McAllister. He's with Mrs. Russell, Mrs. Fane, Aurora, and Gladys, and some other woman. I don't know if they mentioned her name, but she's really snotty and stuck up. And looks like she just, like, drank some lemon juice or something. Anyway, they're talking about how Miss Fish is up there. And now, remember, Miss Fish is the one that they've been to before. She was the one that they were at in Newport at the very beginning, like one of the first episodes, I want to say. If not, like, nah, it was like the second or third episode maybe. But, and she's the one who had the creepy doll party. That's Mrs. Fish. She's apparently really high up in society and stuff like that. Basically, Gladys is just asking, like, hey, what do people do with, what do people do in Newport? And the puckered up face woman, she's just like, oh, the young people go to the casino and stuff. And Miss Russell's just like, oh, well, we could do that. You'd like that, wouldn't you, Gladys? And Mr. McAllister mentions that, oh, of course, your son is staying with Mrs. Fish. Do you know her well? And, she's just like, oh, I don't know her at all, but Larry stayed with her a few times. And he says that, well, we'll go to the casino tomorrow, and I'll ask Mrs. Fish to come with us. And then it cuts to, oh man, Bloomingdale's. Ada and Marion are going to Bloomingdale's. And as they're walking in, Marion sees Mrs. Whatsoever, the stenographer, Mr. Russell's stenographer. She's like walking out with like some new gloves and stuff. And Marion was like about to say something to her, and then she was like, oh no, I guess I don't really know her that well. And apparently she had left her, she left her little pocketbook, a little purse on the counter, and the counter girl was like, oh, miss. And Marion just goes, oh, I'll take it to her. And she mentioned, and the woman's like, oh, Miss Dixon? Now, do I have it written down? That's not what they call her in the office. No, I don't believe I have it down. I thought I had. Miss Russell's assistant. It's Clay. Ah, well. So anyway, but that's not what they call her. Like, that's not her name. And if you remember, Mr. Dixon is the one who, like, caused the railway thing. Like, he's the one who was in charge of, like, that. So, so obviously that's gonna come together, like, such big, like, chance. So then it cuts to her at, she's at the Russells, and she's like, hey, she's handing it to Church, and she's like, oh, hey, I just brought this, your stenographer must have left it, Miss Dixon. Yes. And he goes, Miss Dixon? And she's like, yeah, your stenographer. I met her when she brought some papers for you and gave them to Larry. She said you had to see them at once. And he goes, oh, you mean Mrs. Ainsley? I love that. And apparently that's her name, Mrs. Ainsley. So he's like, what? And she goes, oh, she bought some gloves, and I suppose she had charged them to the name Dixon. And she's like, I'm sorry to bother you. And he goes, "You haven't bothered me at all. Quite the reverse." Goodbye and thank you, Miss Brooke. Because it's like, oh my god, that's the missing piece of the puzzle. Like, holy crap. It was a stenographer the whole time. Oh man. And then it cuts down to the oh man, I was like, yes! Aha! It was like, it just fit like, ooh, so perfectly. Like, oh my god. So then it cuts down to the Van Ryans, and Bridget's talking to Mrs. Bauer about like, oh, he's hiding something. He had more flowers. I saw him hide them. And she's like, I'm gonna go follow him. You tell Bannister that I'm running some errands for you. Oh, and this is where she says you're only interested in Jack because he's found someone else. And Miss Bauer's just like, hey, he's entitled to visit another young lady. It's like, what are you gonna say? What are you gonna say if he catches you? And she's like, I'll think of something. She's like, all right, go on, fit your coat then. Bannister comes down and Miss Bauer's just like, is she talking to you yet? Talking about Aunt Agnes, like, is she's talking. And he goes, well, sort of. She talks to Ada, and then Ada talks to me. And then Miss Bauer's just like, this too will pass. And it's like, I don't know, dude. I think she's going to hold that against you for a long ass time. You sided with the enemy. Oh, man. So then we see John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. He's walking, with the flowers, and Bridget's following him. But then it cuts quick to, whatchamacallit, cuts back upstairs to Miss Bauer. She's bringing Ada her money, the money that she owes her. I forget what that was about, like what that was for, but she owes her, so every now and then, like every week or whatever, she gives her $1. And Mrs. Bauer is just like, hey, I think I might be wrong, but I think Miss Armstrong might be planning to do a disservice to Miss Scott. And Ada's just like, you do not surprise me. It's only when I'm like rewatching the show and doing my reviews that my remote will screw up. Like right there, I was trying to like pause it, but it's over now. So anyway, Marion's just like, I'm gonna go, warn Miss Scott. And my foot's in the way. And then it cuts right up to Miss Scott, and Peggy, Mary, she's talking to Marion, and she's just like, oh, she's gonna tell her what was in the letter, and Marion's just like, well, just tell me, it can't be that bad. And then Peggy's just like, all right, you've waited long enough. And I was like, you're damn right. I literally said out loud, I was like, you're damn right when I was watching this, because it's like, I have been waiting to hear her backstory, like, and hear what really happened since like the first episode. Screw it. So anyway, it's a really sad story. So buckle up. Now, apparently, she met that guy, Elias Finn, who I believe she mentioned by name already. And she said that he wasn't just some like stock boy. They had actually like ran off and like gotten married. And she'd had a child. And she almost died during childbirth, which was pretty common back then. And they didn't have a whole lot of drugs and like stuff like that. People could like literally lose their minds during pregnancy. Forget what it's called. Something with an A. So anyway, she almost died, but she said that by the time she came to and by the time she was all right, the baby was already dead. And that was when, and then eventually her father had caught up to her, and he had made Elias sign a paper that had saying that he'd already been married, which would make their marriage null and void. So the reason that she was going, this happened in like Brooklyn, I think. So the reason that she was going to Mr. Rake's was she was trying to find the midwife Now, for anyone who doesn't know, a midwife is basically like a nurse that takes care of the baby, at like, will like birth the baby and like take care of it and stuff for a little while and like help the mother and stuff. I think. I could be wrong about that. It's not exactly my wheelhouse. Uh, so anyway, she was trying to find the midwife and, figure out, like, did she bury the baby? What happened to the baby? Like, get more information, as one would, But apparently Mr. Rakes couldn't find anything. He couldn't find the midwife. And that's the letter that she read, obviously. And she says that, obviously, not all of that was in the letter, but enough for Armstrong to know that she was, like, she had a child at one point. It's a really sad story. It's honestly, I kind of already figured it out. I think I called before that I think she might have had like an abortion or something. Like not like her dad had made her, So apparently that's why her dad. I mean, she dislikes her dad so much because she was married, and she had a child. But her dad essentially made the marriage null and void, because he got the guy to sign a paper saying that he'd been married before, and or that like he was, I don't know the specific rules about how things were back then, but I think it might have just said that like he was already married or something, or that he'd been married before. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure if like you could remarry back then. I don't know how it worked back then, but essentially he made their marriage null and void. So that's Peggy's backstory. It's really sad. And anyway, and then it cuts to Newport, and they're all playing. I don't know what the hell they're playing. Honestly, it kind of looks like badminton, but it doesn't look like badminton. I kick some ass at badminton. I think I mentioned before, like, I feel when they were in Newport the first time and they were playing like badminton and croquet, I was like, man, I feel so white because I used to play badminton and croquet with my family when I was a kid. Like, when we'd have family gatherings, it's like, hey, set up the croquet set. Hey, let's play badminton. I have a badminton set. I swear to God. I actually have one in like the closet and stuff. So it's just like when I see like these people with like, but they're like white sweaters and like white hats and stuff. And these hats, I love these hats right here. That just like flat like thing with a little ribbon around it. It's like that's like what dudes would wear, and like what women wear would sometimes, but like with the bow tie and like the checker jacket, like that's their play wear, like their play formal wear. Like, oh, I'm going to be running around. Better put on my my straw hat, bow tie, and checkered tweed jacket. That shit always cracks me up. Like, that shit cracks me up. So, and this is like a little casino or whatever. Looks pretty fun. And we see Mrs. Fish finally meet Mrs. Russell, and the first thing she asks, she's like, "How is your husband doing, Mrs. Russell?" And Miss Russell's just like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and she goes, "Aren't they putting him on trial over that train crash? I thought that's why he stayed in New York." And you got to wake up pretty early in the morning to fool Bertha Russell, because she goes, "Oh, if it were, I would have stayed with him." And then Miss Fish is like, "Oh, so he's not in trouble?" And Miss Russell's like, "Nope, not in the least. We're all good. Everything's fine." Paraphrasing a bit there, but that's basically what she says. And she's like, "Oh, he just got a bunch of meetings and stuff." And then he just couldn't make it. And Miss Fish is just like, "Oh, okay." And walks off. And Miss Russell asked Mr. McAllister, she's like, have I messed it up? Was that right? And he's just like, "Oh no, she'll like you the more." Because, Which makes sense, back then you didn't talk about your... Are they playing tennis on grass? Fucking rich people. It is. It is what it is. It's gotta be. That'd be crazy. No, I don't play tennis. I have once, maybe with like a cousin a long time ago. Tennis to me seems like such like a it seems like a sport that like a big brother would make up or something. It's like, boom, all right, I scored, now I got 15 points. What? Oh, I scored again, that's 40. Ooh. You just score it normally, you jackasses. But anyway, that's my rant about tennis. So they all stop and they play. They're getting their drinks and everybody's coming together. And Oscar's like, he's standing there with Gladys, finally trying to work his way into the family. And then we hear Oscar. No, I did that wrong. He goes like, Oscar. And Oscar turns around and he's like, and it's Mr. Adams. He showed up out of nowhere. And Oscar's just like, and everybody else is just like, oh, hey, this is Mr. Adams. He's here. And, oh, it's nice to meet you. Oh, this is my son Larry and daughter Gladys. And he goes, oh, I feel like I know you so well from Oscar. He speaks so highly of you. And the first thing Oscar says to him is, what are you doing here? And he says it just like that. And I'm like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And he goes, oh, I'm staying with Whitmore. Is that... What the hell was that? Chateau Surmer? Chateau Surmer? I'm gonna have to hear him pronounce this shit. Yeah, Chateau Surmer. And it looks like Russell chateaued himself when frickin' John Adams or whatever that was. Yeah, I think it was John Adams. Walked up. Like, Jesus. So anyway, they're just like, oh, we're gonna have dinner and stuff. You should come. And oh man, Oscar's just like, oh my God, I can't. Like, things were really crumbling down for Oscar. Everything was going all according to plan. So then Mr. Adams walks off, and Oscar walks up to him, and he's just like, what the hell do you think you're playing at? And Adams is just like, I think I'm playing on having a lovely time. And then he walks over and helps Gladys, like, get her racket in. Easy. I'm laughing at this. Police patrol. There's a police patrol. It's like, I don't know what I expected police cars to look like, police wagons to look like back then, but I don't know. I've never just like seen it. Just like police patrol. I don't know why it cracks me up, but it does. Oh, man. So here we are at the hearing. What? So, stupid. So, they're at the hearing, he's just like, and the judge is just like, oh, we're here to decide whether there's sufficient enough evidence, All right, now that I've got that out of my system, the judge is asking whether there's sufficient enough evidence to bring the case to trial. And the stenographer comes in, and she's there to just bring him papers. That's what she thinks. It's like, oh, I'm just here to bring these papers and stuff. And the lawyers are just like, hey, we've had new information come to light, and it could, it could affect the case. So the honor's just like, all right, what have you brought? What have you brought to show me? And he's just like, actually, it's a matter of who. And Mr. Russell's just asking his stenographer, like, what happened? Like, why weren't you here? And she's just like, oh, I didn't think you'd need me. And, you know, I have the business, but I got the papers with me. I hope it's not too late. And he's just like, no, you're not too late. And that's when the lawyer's just like, I would like to introduce Miss Ansley, Mr. Russell's stenographer. That's when they call her up. And it seems like back then they don't have, like, stands. It seems like you literally just had to stand in front of the courtroom. Or I guess this might not be a trial. No. That's not right. They had stands and stuff back then. I'm wrong. This is just a hearing, so it's not a trial. I was wrong. But, so she comes up, and the lawyer's like, hey, do you know any... He goes... Do you know anyone in this courtroom? And Mr. Dixon is in the courtroom, if I mention that. And she's just like, oh, no. I mean, he's like, do you know anyone in the courtroom aside from Mr. Russell and Mr. Clay and myself? And she's just like, no. And he goes, are you sure of that? Mr. Dixon, stand up. And Mr. Dixon says, are you sure you don't know him? He's like, no, I don't. He's like, oh, really? He goes, then why were you seen together in the department store Bloomingdale's? He's like, that's not true. I think it is true. And he's like, and she's just like, we have it on good authority that you were seen together with Mr. Dixon in Bloomingdale's. And she goes, no, I used his charge account, but we weren't together. And before she can even say together, he goes, Mr. Dixon yells out, shut up! And that's all she wrote. That's it. I mean, we'll come back to that. But that's the nail in the coffin for old Dixon. He's like, oh, nail in the coffin. But, yeah, that was it. That was the evidence they needed. She's been using his charge account, like, and stuff like that. I forget how they mentioned whether or not they're related, but, like, okay. And it makes a quick cut to see, we see John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. He's still walking through the streets with the flowers, and Bridget's, like, following behind him. And, then it cuts back to cuts real quick back to the trial. Like, it's literally only, like, a few, like, less than a minute. It's like a 30-second cut. I don't understand necessarily why. I guess just to better frame the hearing and stuff. So anyway, yeah. She's still up there, and the lawyer's asking, it's like, and when precisely did you give the note to Mr. Dixon? Talking about the note that said, you know, whatever, I don't care, whatever, you know, by whatever means, you know, make it cheaper or whatever. You remember. So anyway... And she's like, after the crash. He'd written it a while before, but when I read it, I could see it might be some use, so I kept it. So in the future, so I kept it. And the lawyer asks, like, you know, did you know what Mr. Dixon was doing? And she goes, you know, I guess. And he's like, you know, this basically they're just like hammering, like this was not the first time that he'd appropriated money for another purpose. And she's just like, oh, I never knew the details. And it's like only the fact of his dishonesty. And she asks, and the lawyer asks, like, why was the note actually written? And apparently it was during when they were building the house. Some of the decorations were like really expensive. So he'd sent a letter saying that, you know, this is too expensive. Do it, you know, do it else. And that's when he went somewhere else. And Mr. Russell is just like, well, that answers one question, like where the note came from. So basically, he's all free in the clear. The judge even says you were exonerated. You go with your reputation intact. And then he tells Mr. Dixon and Miss Ansley that he's going to refer it to the prosecutor's office, and they'll probably end up in that courtroom real soon. Which, yeah. And Mr. Russell goes, strikes me as the element of chance. A woman goes to buy gloves, and disaster is averted. What if she'd chosen a different store? And the lawyer's just like, you don't need to tell us the importance of luck. And then Mr. Clay kind of brings over Miss Ansley, the stenographer, and Mr. Russell's just like, what do you want? And she's like, she apologizes and stuff. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. And he goes, we get to see Ruthless Russell again. He's like, did you think it was right before? And now you're sorry because you've been caught? Like, I believe you should go to jail, Miss Ansley. But whether a jury agrees with me or not, I will tell you what I've decided would be best for you as a plan. And he goes, he tells her that he's going to keep watching her. He's going to watch her. And anytime she applies for a job that is above the rank of a menial servant, he's going to inform he's going to inform her employers of her past and make it impossible for them to hire her. And he tells her that you're going to earn your living scrubbing floors and like to make your bread. Like that's what you're going to do. And she's just like, you don't mean that. And he's like, I think you know that I do. And it's like, yeah, you tried to torch his whole life. He's going to return the favor. Like, this is the dude that made another guy kill himself. He doesn't f*** around. So anyway, we see where John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt was going. I'm not laughing at where he's going. I'm laughing at the fact that I was really, really, really wrong. Like, as wrong as I could be, because he's not going to a brothel. He's going to a cemetery. And Bridget's like hiding behind a tree. She's followed him the whole way there. But he notices her because, you know, who is she? Batman? So anyway, he's just like, what are you doing here? He's like, Bridget, are you following me? And then, you know, he's like, oh, is this a joke? You're going to make fun of me when I come back to the house? Stuff like that. What is this? And she's just telling him that, you know, they were wondering where he was taking the flowers. And he's like, oh, because I replaced you in my heart with a new girl. And he's like, well, here she is. This is my girl, you know. And he goes on to tell her, you know, May Trotter. Mrs. John Trotter, to be exact. And for a second, I was like, damn, was he married? It's like, man. But no, apparently it was his mother who died in a fire at the age of 30 when he was 9. He even says, like, Bridget's just like, how did she die? And he goes, she burned to death when I was 9. And Bridget's just like, what? And even I was like, holy shit. Like, I was thinking like cholera or something like that. No, but like, holy burned to death? That's serious shit. And he says it was in the Pestigo fire of 1871, which I'm gonna take a wild guess and say was an actual thing that actually happened. I think they would make that up. And he asked her, like, you know, have you ever heard of it? And she was like, no. He mentions that it's forgotten because it was the same day as the Great Chicago Fire, which I have heard of, and I'm sure a lot of people have. Which, wow, like, what are the odds that it was in Wisconsin, by the way. Pestigo, it's in Wisconsin. The only reason I know that is because that's what he says. And apparently, like over 2,000 people died in it. And it's like, what are the odds? Like, it's a bad day to be a city. Like, apparently a forest fire swept through the town. And, you know, and Bridget asked him, like, how did they find her? And he goes, they didn't. Most of the dead couldn't be identified. And she asked him, you know, well, what's in the grave? He says that his dad, you know, he says, no one's in the grave. It's just like, his dad put some rocks in it with her clothes and stuff, and that was it. You know, he wanted somewhere to come and think about her. And he mentioned that his dad did. He would go there day in and day out, spend all of his time there. And she asked him, like, you know, where is he now? And he says that his dad's dead. He died 5 years after his mother when he was 14. Like, I mean, damn, like, that's hard. And she, like, you know, he sat down next to her, and she sits down next to him, and he mentions that he visits her grave every week during the month of her birthday. And, you know, that he used to laugh at his dad, for going there, but now there he is. And she asks him, like, hey, you know, do you have any brothers and sisters? And he says that he has 2 brothers, but they lost touch. And it's like it must be really hard, especially like for anyone at any time, but like especially like back then, like they didn't have like programs and stuff for kids. It was like you go to an orphanage until you're old enough, and then you off and go off on your own. And I like seeing more of them. I like seeing more of them together, and I feel like this is going to be a good little help to their relationship, you know, because she's seeing that, hey, he's been through some serious shit too, you know? So I've said it before, I'm really interested to see where things go with them and where, you know, what happens with them. They're a nice little couple. So anyway, then it cuts to the dinner. Mrs. Fish's dinner. I was gonna see if they were eating fish, but they're already at the dessert. And the cake looks good. Ooh, I have cake. So anyway, they're at the they're at the dinner, and Miss Russell, Mrs. Fish are on like opposite ends of the table, and Miss Russell's just like, you know, she's all happy, you know, talking with Oscar, which I like seeing the two of them together as well. I don't know. I feel like they're a nice little, not a couple obviously, but like a nice little pairing, like a nice little duo. You know, they're both ambitious. And Mrs. Fish goes, she's sitting next to Larry, and she goes, "Your mother seems very gay," which I know back then gay meant happy, but it was still just funny to hear. Like it was still just funny to hear. And anyway, so Larry tells her like, "Oh, she had some good news from New York before we arrived." And Mrs. Fish literally puts down her glass and was like, "Oh, what's this, Mrs. Russell? Good news from New York. Has your husband got off?" And Miss Russell's just like, No. He just wanted to wire me how well things are going and sends his best wishes to all of you." And Aurora just kind of looks over and is like, good job. Because I think I forgot to mention this. Back then, they didn't talk about like shit like that. You didn't talk about scandal. No. You keep everything down. You downplay everything. You dismiss everything. Nah, we're doing fine. You know, image is everything, especially like back then. You know, so even though Miss Fish knows full well what's going on back in New York, and that her husband was just at a hearing to see whether or not he would go on trial for like negligence, manslaughter as a result of negligence or something like that, she's fully aware. But the fact that Mrs. Russell's keeping up appearances, you had to keep up appearances. That was the most important. Once you weren't able to keep up appearances, you were cast out. So as long as she keeps up the appearance that everything is going fine, then everybody will treat her as though it is. So Mrs. Fish asks Mr. McAllister, you know, have you persuaded her to buy a place here, or better still, to build one? See, because here's the thing. It's like there are people who like they want to kind of bring in Mrs. Russell because, well, she's stupid rich. Like, she's stupid rich. And so Mr. McAllister, he's just like, I would not claim to have persuaded her to do anything. And Miss Fish is just like, she's tenacious, I'll give her that. And Miss Russell hears her, and Aurora goes, smile and take it as a compliment. And Miss Russell's like, it is a compliment. If you knew the number of times she's pretended I didn't exist, and now here I am at her table because I'm tenacious. Raise your glass. And Aurora says, and because you amuse her more than she thought you would. And, you know, Aurora asks her, like, how are the plans for the ball coming along? And Aurora says that she's worried that it might be too soon. And Miss Russell's just like, not for Gladys. And Royce is like, no, not for Gladys. For you. No, Gladys should have been out. uh, anyway, she says that Miss Russell's just like, oh, don't worry. I have a campaign in mind. And then it cuts to Mr. Adams. And he's kind of flirting with Gladys. While Oscar glowers at him from across the table. Like, you son of a bitch. You know what I'm... Which I'm going to be interested to see. Because obviously this is going to cause a lot of friction between Oscar and Mr. Adams. More friction than usual. Miss Russell's just like, your friend has quite a way with young women, Mr. Van Ryn. Which I can't say and not laugh, because he's gay. No, he seems very gay. Oh, man. Anyway, Oscar's just like, you're right. They seem to be having fun. And Miss Russell's just like, oh, that's all very new for Gladys. She's only coming out this season. She hasn't had that much time to get bored of any of it. Yeah, she must... Yeah, she hasn't had time to get bored of any of it yet. And then Oscar's just like, then we must guard her closely and hope she never will. And Miss Russell can't get anything past old Bertha. She goes, not too closely. That's my job. So they all finish up dinner, and apparently they're going to go play a game or whatever. And then it cuts to Mrs. Astor and her daughter, and she's just like, hey, would you reconsider, let Miss Russell in? And this and that. You let some people in? And her mother's just like, oh, no, I'm not going to. Which is about the gist of that whole conversation. And then it cuts downstairs to... I'll make sure it's still working. Downstairs to the Van Ryns, and Bannister comes in, and he tells Peggy that Miss Van Ryn wants to see her upstairs. And then he goes, Miss Armstrong, she was wondering if you might join them in 10 minutes. Miss Armstrong's just like, me? And Bannister goes, you. And Armstrong's just like, oh God, what have I done? And then it cuts up to Agnes and Ada and Marion. They're all there talking to Peggy. And the first thing Agnes says, and she goes, and this midwife, did she bury the child? Did anyone christen him? And a christening, for anyone who doesn't know, is... not 100%, so correct me if I'm wrong. It's a ceremony in which you name a child, I believe. Could be wrong about that. So she's just wondering, did anybody name him? Did anything happen, And, she's like, did the midwife bury him? And Peggy's just like, I don't know, because I never found her. And she's like, I hope Mr. Rakes could help, but he couldn't trace her either. And that's when Armstrong walks in, and Agnes is just like, so that was the letter that Armstrong read. And Armstrong starts up. She was like, well, I was concerned. And Agnes just goes, silence. You'll have your turn. And Peggy's just like, yeah, that was the letter. And basically Agnes says that Armstrong said that she bore an illegitimate child whom you then abandoned. And Agnes says that she now finds out that you were a married mother whose child died. Which is a pretty big difference. That's a huge difference. And then Agnes says that she's lost children. And, you know, she knows what that is. And Ada just kind of looks over at her and she's like, "You do, Agnes. And we should have every..." And, you know, she's basically just gonna say, like, you know, we should have every... You know, we should take care of Peggy. And before she can even start, you know, Agnes is just like, yes, you know. But now we must decide what to do with Armstrong. And before we get into that, it's interesting to note that, because we know that Oscar is her son, you know, but one, I'm not sure if they've mentioned if that's her only child, and two, we gotta remember, this is like 1882, and as I already mentioned, women losing babies was very common, even in Peggy's time, like, you know, a few decades later. So imagine Agnes being even you know, probably, how old is she? What do we say, 50s, 60s? So we're looking at, like, what, 30, 40 years ago? In, like, 1850 something? Yeah, there's a good chance that she lost a lot of children, which is a tragic thing. It's rarer now, thank God, you know, the advancements that we've made in modern medicine. But it still does happen. It still is tragic. So Agnes obviously sympathizes with her, and she's already made, you know, put Armstrong sort of like on report. You know, she's already kind of given her a warning. You know, and Armstrong is just like, I was only thinking to protect the reputation of this house. You know, and Agnes is just like, I could say the same. You may go. And I was like, oh shit, Armstrong just got the boot. Finally. And she, you know, she didn't fire her right there. That was just her telling, okay, you can leave now. So Agnes asks Peggy, like, you know, what do we do? What's to be done? And Peggy's just like, with respect, ma'am, I can't stay here. I was like, what? And she was like, not now. And she's like, she's like, I'll leave tonight. And Ada is just like, I hope you don't mean that. Like, you know, yeah. And Peggy's just like, you know, she's just like, the way she treats me downstairs makes it impossible that I should stay. And that would only get worse. And, you know, she's just like, you know, I thank you for all of your kindness, you know, and appreciate everything you've done. Ada stands up. She's like, oh my God, you know, we thank you for all the hard work, you know. And Agnes is just like, of course, but we do hope you reconsider, you know, because they like her. They've got, you know. And she's just like, I'll go up and pack a bag. And, you know, she asks if she can come back for the rest of her things another day. Certainly, obviously. And it's sad because it's like, there's no reason for her to go. Even Ada is just like, wouldn't it have been easier to, like wouldn't it have been better to lose Armstrong? And Agnes is just like, and try to train a new maid in all of my ways at my time of life. And then she's just like, well, maybe Miss Scott will change her mind. Marion's just like, she won't. But perhaps she's right. And she says that, you know, perhaps the time has come for a new chapter for all of us. And Ada is just like, oh, finally you make that sound. Because they don't know that she's planning to elope and planning to go off with Mr. Rakes. Oh. And Peggy, she starts leaving. She starts walking out the door. And Agnes is just like, can I persuade you to stay, Miss Scott? You know, she catches her. And Peggy's just like, no, I gotta go. And Agnes is just like, you know, it ought to be Armstrong who goes. Seems very feeble on my part. So basically Peggy's just like, you know, I gotta go. they leave on good, and Agnes is just like, you leave on good terms. I'm sure she'd give her a great reference as well. I'm sure that this isn't going to be the last we see of Peggy. I'm sure she'll shoot. I'm sure she'll be back. And I still have episode 9 to go over. So I'm sure a lot of you are watching this like, like, oh, this has already happened. It's already, But anyway, then it cuts back to Newport. And earlier when we first see Newport, Mrs. Russell mentions that she'd love to see Mrs. Astor's home in Newport, and the puckered up woman face, the puckered up face woman, she's just like, she's not in town. So anyway, they're all sitting there talking about will things change having Mrs. Astor here every summer, because Mrs. Astor was having her house like built, like sort of added onto and renovated and stuff. So now she's going to be down there every summer. And basically Mr. McAllister's just like, I think it'll be a challenge to make sure that Newport and New York stay pure, essentially. Stay, that only the rich can be there, is pretty much what he's saying. And then Miss Russell just blurts out of nowhere, is like, do you know what the Astors paid for Beechwood? Which is the name of their Newport house. And this houses with, back then houses had like names and shit, Anyway, so, Mr. McAllister, he's just like, it's not far short of $200,000. Which is a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Like, nowadays, a beach house in Newport would be millions. Millions and millions. Maybe. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. So anyway, Miss Russell is just like, I wish I could have seen it. And Gladys is like, oh, why? And she's like, well, for anything, I would like to know what you can expect for $200,000. And then, old puckered up face woman is just like, well, it's a shame she's not here. She's just like, well, you can't go in. I'm sorry, you can't. I don't know who this bitch is, but I like her. And Mr. McAllister is like, kind of get it. He's like, well, why don't I take you up there this afternoon? I know the butler. He won't mind. Oh, man. And he's saying that the routine that they have is that the butler goes up there 2 days before to get everything ready, and Miss Astor is set to be there tomorrow, so it'll be all right. And then Aurora is like, shouldn't we wait for Miss Astor to be here? And then Mr. McAllister's just like, no, it'll be simpler today. And Aurora just kind of like, looks over at Miss Russell and it's like, yeah, okay. Now, see, like, Miss Astor's not going to let Miss Russell in her house while she's there, so we're going to have to sneak her in. And then we cut to Peggy. She's come back home, and she, her mom is just like saying like, "Whoa, but shouldn't this Miss Armstrong have been the one to go, not you?" Peggy's just like, maybe. So basically, her mom and her are just talking about that. She's gonna come and move in. She wants to come and move in with them as long as she can go and keep working at the Globe. Okay. So then we cut to Mrs. Astor's house. Or Beechwood, and it's spelled Beech, wood, all one word. Huh. So anyway, they're pulling up in their carriage up to the place, and Mr. McAllister is talking about, he's like, we could take a quick look around the first floor, can't we, Hefty? Mrs. Astor wouldn't mind. You could tell her I was here with Miss Fane. And he hands him, like, money. I'm assuming it's a lot, like 100, maybe 200 bucks. Could be a 20, I don't know. And the butler's just like, oh, be my guest. His name's Mr. Hefty. Butler. So I wondered, where's Mr. Wimpy? Anyway, so they're just walking around the house. He's Mr. McAllister's telling him about it and stuff. And then dramatic music starts playing, and we see a horse and carriage coming up to the house. It's Mrs. Astor. And Hefty walks in, he's like, she's here. She's come early. And even Mr. McAllister is just like, oh, good Lord. Shall we go out the back? And he goes, no, she knows you're in the house. She would have seen your carriage. And he goes, get rid of Mrs. Russell. And he's like, come with me. And she's just like, And a footman, like, leads her out the back. And she's got to walk through, like, the downstairs. It's possible she's never been downstairs in her own house. Like, it's fairly possible. Or at the very least, she's only been down there maybe like 2 or 3 times, tops. Like, I swear. Like, we don't go, like, the family doesn't go downstairs. The servants come upstairs. You know, if there's something. Very rarely will they come downstairs and do something. Like, I remember, like in Downton Abbey, it's always a huge big deal when, like, the family comes downstairs. It's like, oh, shit. Like, what are you doing? So yeah, it's like she's got to walk past people with pots and pans, and she gets let out of the house to the back, and it's like there's this dude scaling some fish. There's a footman having a cigarette. Another maid plucking some chickens, and another maid like beating a rug with one of those dust things. This is probably the lowest she's ever seen in her life. And she's... chicken's clucking and everything. She stiff up her lip, chin up, and walks out. And that's how the episode ends. That's gotta be my... betrayer. That's got to be my my thumbnail for this video. I gotta find like something funny to put. Oh, there it is. She's like blowing like chicken feathers away from her face. Oh man. And they're all just looking at her like, what the like, what is she doing out here? Oh, man. Oh. So that's the end of that episode. Man, it was really good. That's my initial thought. We got to hear Peggy's backstory finally, which, hits you right where you live. It was sad to see her go, but like I said, we're gonna see her again, I'm sure. I would have liked to have seen, I would have rather had Armstrong get sacked and then, Peggy just stay on. But this would be good for the drama. Got to see a resolution to Mr. Russell's case. That was good. Oh, man. Like I said, it all boiled down to chance. Just like, one chance encounter. That's all it came down to. Mr. Russell, or not Mr. Russell, Mr. Oscar and Mr. Adams are having some little trouble in paradise. Oh, man. Marion has made her choice and told almost called him Larry, told Tom that she's gonna marry him. And we got to see a little bit more insight into John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, and maybe just a little step forward in his relationship with Bridget. Now they've seen that they both have like this tragic background. She's seen that, hey, he's had a troubled life as well, and I like to see more of them. We got to see a little bit about Watson or Collier. Gonna be interested to see what happens with that. I feel like they're setting stuff up either for the next episode, which again I haven't watched yet, so like a lot of these things could be resolved next episode, or they're setting stuff up for season 2. They don't want to give it all away in the first season. We got to see a bit more of Monsieur Boudin. Is that how you say it? And he's got something going on. He's got some big thing going on. So I'm sure that'll be little fish hooks for to keep you invested for season 2. Looking forward to season 2, which I already am, and I ain't even seen the season finale yet. So, box. So yeah, I can't wait to watch the next episode, which I don't have to. I'm about to watch it right now. Well, not right now. I still have to edit through this video and then start uploading, and then I'll start off on the next episode and do my review of that and get it uploaded. So I should, by the time you watch this video, I will have already watched, I should have probably already watched and reviewed and probably edited my review of episode 9. And then I just gotta, because I do this on my phone, it takes forever for the things to upload. Like, I kid you not, it'll take several hours often. So, that being said, I think that's pretty much everything in this episode. Oh yeah, alright. Now, if you like this video, please go ahead, like, subscribe, share. It really helps out my channel. If you didn't like this, did I say episode? If you didn't like this video, let me know why. Well, and thank you for watching this long if you have. And yeah, I think that's it. Again, thank you all for watching. I've been Apocalypse the Geek Guru. See you next time.